She came crawling out of the brush like an animal. No shoes, no clothes, just 2 giant leaves pressed tight to her chest with trembling arms. Her knees were raw and bleeding. Dirt caked her face. Red bruises bloomed across her ribs, her shoulders, her thighs. Sunburn peeled across her back in strips. She looked no older than 20. And she looked broken. Silas Reeve had seen many things in his 58 years. War, plague, wives screaming for husbands who never came home, but nothing had prepared him for the sight of that girl on the edge of his ranch, stumbling through the fence line like death itself had spit her back out. He dropped the bucket he was carrying. It hit the dry Texas soil with a heavy thud. The girl flinched. She raised one shaking hand like a warning. "Don't come closer," she cried. "I'll scream. I swear I will. I'll kill you if I have to." Her voice was cracked, weak, but wild. There was fight in her and terror, too. Silas didn't move. He raised both hands slowly and stepped back. "All right," he said quietly. "No one's going to hurt you here." The girl looked at him, not like a man, but like a predator. A threat, a shadow she'd just barely escaped. And then her legs buckled. She dropped to the ground in a pile of bruises and dust and silence, her leaves still clutched to her chest. "Oh," her body shaking so hard her teeth chattered. Silas did not rush to help her. Instead, he walked to the porch, pulled off his coat, and laid it on the ground a few feet away. Then, he sat down. Not too close, not too far. The wind picked up across the prairie. It carried the smell of dry grass and old secrets. She was still watching him, wide-eyed, ready to run or bite or die. He said nothing, and neither did she. 2 people, 1 ranch, a 100 unspoken stories between them. But only one question mattered right now. Who the hell was this girl? And what kind of hell had she just escaped from? The girl didn't say a word the first night. She curled up in a ball under the porch roof, wrapped in that old coat like it was the only thing holding her together. Silas didn't press. He left her water, some beans, a blanket that used to belong to his wife. And then he went to bed with one eye open. The next morning, she was still there, still shaking, still clutching those damn leaves like her life depended on them. "You got a name?" he asked from a distance. She hesitated, then in a voice so thin it could barely float across the yard. She said, "Evelyn." He nodded. Didn't ask more. She wasn't ready. The days that followed were slow. Evelyn wouldn't come inside the cabin. Wouldn't eat unless he backed away from the table first. Wouldn't sleep unless the lamp was burning all night. She jumped at every sound, every crow, every creak in the wood. Silas saw it all. He'd seen shell shock before, but this was something different. This wasn't a woman who survived war. This was a woman who survived men. On the 3rd day, she finally stepped inside, not far, just past the door. She stood there staring at the fireplace and then her eyes locked on something hanging by the wall, a leather collar, worn, cracked, still stained with something dark in the seams. Her face turned white. She backed away like she'd seen a ghost. "You one of them," she whispered. "You kept women here like me." Silas felt the weight in her words. He looked at that collar like it had never belonged in his home, even though he'd hung it there himself. "I used to ride security wagons," he said. "They didn't tell us what was in the back. We were paid to keep our mouths shut, and I did." For too long, Evelyn's hands started to tremble again. Her breathing grew sharp, like the panic was waking back up in her bones. She didn't scream, didn't run. But the distance between them had never felt wider. That night, she didn't sleep under the porch. She slept in the barn on hay like a stray dog that didn't trust the food in the bowl. Silas sat alone on the porch, turning a tin cup in his hands. And thinking about every time he looked away when he should have looked closer, he thought the worst was over. He was wrong, because the next visitor to the ranch was not looking for forgiveness. He was looking for the girl. The knock came just before sunset. Not loud, not polite either, more like a warning. Silas stood from his porch chair, hand-brushing the revolver on his hip. He hadn't touched that thing in years. But tonight, he had a feeling. At the gate stood a man with a face you don't forget. Long coat, dusty boot, and a scar running down the left side of his chin like God had carved it there on purpose. Evelyn saw him through the window. She froze, dropped the spoon from her hand. Clang right onto the wooden floor. "That's him," she whispered. "That's the one who locked the door behind me." Silas stepped off the porch. "Evening, Jude," he said. The man grinned without smiling. "Silas Reeve, still breathing, I see. You here for her. I'm here for what belongs to Mr. Clay." The wind stopped. Even the ceases shut up for a second. Gus didn't blink. You tell Ben Clay that Silas Reeve already buried enough men for one lifetime. He doesn't want me digging again. Jude's smirk twitched. The name still held weight. Silas saw it, that flicker of doubt in the man's eyes. Like maybe, just maybe, this old rancher wasn't as retired as he looked. Jude tipped his hat, didn't push, didn't fight. He turned that horse around and rode off without another word. Evelyn stayed in the corner of the kitchen for hours. Didn't eat. Didn't move. Didn't breathe too loud. Later that night, Silas sat on the porch again. Same tin cup, same thoughts eating at him. That knock hadn't been a threat. It was a test, and now Clay knew where she was. What came next would not be a warning. It would be a storm. You're still here. Then you're the kind of person who wants to see what happens when the past comes calling and a man finally picks a side. So, if you haven't already, go ahead and subscribe because trust me, you'll want to be here when the fire starts. And that fire, well, it kicks off real soon cause in the next part, some devils don't knock. They just walk in. They came back 3 days later. No knocking, no talking, just the sound of hooves and the smell of bad history rolling in with the dust. 3 men again, same faces. Only this time, they weren't here to ask. They were here to take. Evelyn saw them from the barn loft. She dropped the brush she'd been using to clean the mare and backed into the hay like it could swallow her whole. Silas met them halfway up the drive. He didn't bring a gun. Didn't need one. You got our answer, the man with the scar asked. Same voice that used to bark orders in the dark. The one that still made Evelyn's spine go stiff. Silas didn't speak, not right away. Instead, he set down a small wooden box on top of a weathered fence post, opened it slowly like it might bite. Inside was an old U.S. Marshal badge, broken clean in two, and a folded piece of parchment. The scarred man peered in, eyes narrowing as he read the faded ink. That's Clay's signature, he muttered. A pardon, Silas nodded. Signed in 73, meant to keep me breathing if things ever went south. And you're giving it up? The man asked, his tone somewhere between impressed and suspicious. I'm trading it, Silas said. For the girl and for peace. He gets the badge, he gets my silence, but he never gets her. The man ran a thumb along the edge of the broken star, then looked up at Silas long and hard before he finally said, we'll pass it along. No promises, just one will do, Silas replied. Tell him I still know where he buried them. That part wasn't bluff. They left without a word more. Evelyn didn't come down from the loft till the sun dipped low. She stepped soft like the ground might still crack open beneath her. You gave that up for me? She asked. Her voice was quiet, but not scared this time. Just wondering. Silas didn't look at her. He just sat on the porch like always, staring out past the fence line, past the trees, like maybe he was watching his past finally walk away, but it hadn't. Not really, because the badge might be gone, but what it stood for that was still buried somewhere deep in the dirt. And in the next part, we find out if love is enough to dig it up or finally let it go. Days pass like wind through dry grass. Soft, unnoticed, but always moving. Evelyn started leaving the barn earlier. Sometimes she even beat Silas to the kettle in the morning. She still jumped at loud sounds. Still flinched when a shadow moved too fast, but she laughed once, just a little, when the rooster slipped off the fence rail and landed flat on his face. Silas heard it, didn't say a word, just smiled into his coffee. They never talked about the badge or the box or the men who rode away. Some things were better left under the porch like old tools still there, but not needed every day. One evening, as the sun sank behind the ridge, Evelyn sat next to him on the porch, close enough for her shoulder to rest against his arm. You never asked for anything, she said. Not once. Why? Silas stared out at the field. Same as always. You've been taken enough, he said. Didn't feel right taking more. Silence again, but the kind that didn't hurt anymore. Later that night, she left something by his door. It wasn't much, just a folded cloth with her name stitched in the corner. That was the closest thing to love either of them knew how to say. Now, let me ask you something. Can a man like Silas, who once turned a blind eye to cruelty, who rode for the wrong side for far too long, can he truly be loved? Can saving one life ever wash away the sin of standing silent while others suffered? And if not, then what is forgiveness even for? Maybe this wasn't about redemption. Maybe it was just about doing the right thing one more time before the end. If this story moved something in you, if it made you think, made you feel, then don't forget to hit like. And if you want more stories like this, the kind that stay with you long after the screen goes dark, go ahead and subscribe. Because the West was never about cowboys and shootouts from a set. It was about people broken, brave, trying to outrun their past long enough to find a little peace. And sometimes if the wind's just right, they